Hello again. Welcome to another video, and now I'm going to. This is a response video to Chris Mohan, who had this idea, this very nice idea, which I of course have to pervert. Which is, if you're a person who likes mainstream films, what films would you recommend to people like that who want into more world cinema, more cinema that's a bit more daring, and just try and push people into areas they might not have tried before, and slowly dip the foot in and slowly build up an appreciation for the world of cinema beyond the mainstream. Because world cinema is a stupid name, because world cinema is the world. World cinema is any cinema that's not in your country, basically. So to me, world cinema could be defined as American cinema because it's not my cinema, even though we don't call it that. We just assume world American cinema is dominant. My take on it is, what films should you not watch straight away? Because it's good to see you watch these films, but there's some films you should leave for a bit and then build up the tolerances before you get to those films. And that's what I'm going to cover. Other people are doing the good work of maybe try this one, maybe try that one. You might like it. Okay, these are 6 you should wait and watch later. And these are 6 films I like a lot. So they're not like the films that are out there or anything. Maybe 1 or 2 of them are, but they're more extreme. They're good films, but they're more extreme than you might expect. So if you start off by going from Transformers or The Flash or Mission Impossible to some of these films, you're gonna have a shock, and maybe not a good one. So what I'm doing here is delivering on what these films you should be more careful with, basically. So I hope I explained myself properly. Okay. So the first one is Salo, the Pasolini film. This is not a film you should show to people who are not used to world cinema. I know I've got a story for this one. I went to see it with my friend Gavin, and we knew who Pasolini was, and we knew we'd watched a lot of world cinema. We were experienced. We knew what we were going for. This is going to be extreme, and we saw it, and we found it hilarious. Another person we worked with, we found out who also saw the film. We noticed them further down, and we thought, we should leave them alone because they looked traumatized. And I talked to her the next day, and she was like in shock what she'd seen. It was like, oh my god! And there was these 2 sickos laughing in the back, and but that's the thing is, you have to build up to Salo. You cannot just watch Salo and think you cannot go from the Barbie to Salo. That's too much. You have to slowly watch a few Pasolini films. You have to watch some extreme films slowly, carefully, and then you can get to Salo, and even then you'll probably hate it. But it takes a while. You should not jump in from mainstream to Salo. That's one film you should not. It's not possible to do. Okay, the next one was released as a mainstream film, kind of, in a sense. It's Crash, David Cronenberg's Crash. This one was mass released, but it did better in art house because people knew what to expect in art house circuit. And the mainstream circuit, people saw it, and it's not for us. It's that kind of film, it's not for us. We've seen it once, we've never seen it again. That kind of level. You need to watch some Cronenberg films. You need to understand the more out there type of filmmaking that was involved, because it's very much a film by ideas, and its ideas are uncomfortable for some people, mixing sex and car crashes and violence and suggesting this human psychology that's advancing something that's already around the human psyche and taking it out and moving it forward almost like an art form, which is too much for most people. It's like, what are you doing? What? So you need to build to Crash. You can't really just go and see, go from mainstream film to Crash. It will freak you out. and it was mass released as well by a small distributor, but still mass released in certain cinemas and banned in certain places, and it was hard one to take for some people. It's found its audience now, but I think it's one of those ones you should show them a few more Cronenberg films first. Even some of the more mainstream Cronenberg films can freak people out. This one is really extreme. Um, Next is going for Graveyard of Honor. The 1975 version is what I'm talking about. And this is the one by Kenju Fakasuka. I know I'm mispronouncing the name. He's a great director. I've talked about quite a lot of his films. He's wonderful director, but he does what he's interested in, especially in the 70s when he was on his run. And Graveyard of Honor is insane. It's completely insane. It's a Yakuza film where the Yakuza is so self-destructive and so insane and so destructive to everyone around them that it's going to whiplash you completely. If you're going for there's a lot of Japanese genre films, and the attraction of them is they do things that the mainstream American and British films won't do. They will go further. They will have characters of a bit more interest, and they do have a different social system. And they're understandable to the mass audience. If you give yourself breathing room, you can go from like a mainstream American film to some of these Japanese Yakuza movies. You'll have to acclimatize a little bit, but eventually you'll figure it out. There's understandable tropes there, and you can really appreciate them. But it takes a while. You have to slowly build. I mean, SGS Arts talked about Man from Nowhere as a good middle ground film because it had some certain cliches of mainstream filmmaking, but it's also a very good film with lots of good character stuff. Graveyard of Honor is going too far. It'll mess you up because it's got all the crazy Japanese stuff, but it's also got a very crazy central character who's self-destructive in the extreme, who you can get a grip on, which makes the film wonderful, but it's probably too much if you're going to start off with that one. It's probably going to make you think, I'm not watching any more of these films. These films are crazy. No way. That's nope. Now, Graveyard of Honor was actually remade by Takeshi Miike. And, of course, I can't do a list like this without a Miike film in here. So it's Audition. Audition was another one like Crash. It was a bit more mass released than some of these other films. And it was sold upon, you're not going to believe the final third of the film. But the whole film's creepy, really. You might not even make it to that bit because the first two thirds is creepy in a different way, which is this guy who's a lonely widower who is suggesting auditions to find a wife, and there's all these actors coming in, and he's manipulating them, and it's pretty horrible. And I think at the time it was viewed as horrible, but even now, more would be like, what is he doing? This is insane. It's really weird, and that's the thing. I went in waiting to see the weird violence I had heard about, but I was like, even before we got there, this film was nuts. From the off, it was nuts. And I think it's almost like the worst, nastiest parody of a romantic comedy for the first 2,000. It goes really extreme. So this is very dodgy territory to start with, and then it goes into extreme violence. This is a wonderful film, but it's probably too much for your average person in the street, unless you've actually had some Miike films in between that are a bit more normal, or some Japanese films. And you can get a sense of what the sense of humor is, and then you can probably go to Audition and go, okay, this is fine. But I think Audition, a lot of people heard about it and they saw it, and it was like, oh my god, what am I watching? And it probably put a lot of people off. I mean, a lot of people who loved it say how great it was and how it changed everything. But I don't think everybody felt that way. I think it's a case of, I think some people saw it and were like freaked out. So it is a kind of one you might want to let other people see it first, and then, see other films like it and then go to it. So number 5 is Paranoid Park. Although Peter Watkins, lots of films like Privilege, The War Game, pretty much most of his films can be in this category where it might disturb you. not because of violence or anything like that. There is violence in this one, but it's not as violent as you think. It's just the state of fact about humanity and how it manipulates itself to see something's acceptable, even when morally they're not. So it takes the idea of people get hunted down by the government and makes it not an action movie. It's like it makes you understand the point of view of the people who are creating this, and it makes you see the point of view of the people who are victimized by it, rather than just saying, let's put, you know, a secondary action star in this film and have them blow everyone up and say this is wrong and leave it at that. No, this film actually goes into why people do it, how terrifying it is, how politically easy it is for some people to do if they're inclined that way, and the processes of the thought process of how getting from A to B, from going from a democratic society to something that's much more different. And you might find some of your points of view stretched to the extreme towards fascism in this film that might be disturbing. So I would push people towards other political films that maybe aren't as far to get to warm them up a little bit for this one. This one, if you go from like a Mission Impossible movie to this, it's too much of a whiplash. It's gonna mess you up. It's going from not thinking about implications at all, but enjoying the action, to oh my god, these implications are horrific. Oh my god. So it's a very different thing. And Privilege as well has that thing of it's looking at pop stars, but then tons of tables on you in an extreme way. The War Games of a nuclear war that was banned in the UK for 20 years. I mean, Watkins made a lot of films like this, and I think some of the films he made were such a whiplash to people who saw them. It was like, oh my god, I can't believe this. So, I mean, this is probably perhaps one of the lesser whiplash films, actually, but I still think it would be a whiplash to people. But and even for like Peter Watkins, it's one of the easier films. And then Watkins is great. I love his films, but they're not for everybody. People will get offended. He's kind of like Chris Mohan in a way, in the sense of great director, in no way in the mainstream of popular thought, even though people should listen to him. The final one is The Bed Sitting Room, which is a Richard Lester film from the 60s that came out, written by Spike Milligan, stars a lot of movie stars from that era, a lot of comedy movie stars from the era. Came out and bombed because of the depressing look at post-nuclear Britain. And because I was doing this one, I knew not to do the War Game from Watkins. Basically, this one looks at the absurdity and surreal possibilities of post-nuclear bomb Britain, looking at how Britain is so tied to its habits and tied to its civility. Even a bomb would just drive the survivors mad, but they wouldn't be very useful survivor tactics at all. And it's a parody of Britain taken to its most extreme. And it's one of those things that every country should have something that's about them, or a few films like this about them that are so outrageous, are far less kind than even the supposedly polite satires you get sometimes. This is much more like, yeah, this one's, you're not going to get it first time. Even something that's a bit more mainstream from Lester, like How I Won the War, was too much for most people. Bed Sitting Room is way too much for most people. It's just like, what the hell am I watching? So it's not a film to show straight away, but it is a wonderful, moody film that kind of captures a lot of the kind of angst and weirdness of the late 60s, early 70s in Britain in a unique way. You may not like the film, but there's weird tension between the established people who are represented by the movie stars. So they're actually using the stars in this film actually creates this wonderful sense of these are the entitled people who are now going mad. And it creates a weird resonance just on how insane they all are. And the other people are dead. And it's just a sense of the youth have been destroyed by the craziness of the older generation. And it's just a wonderful feeling to it. But it's very different. So I would definitely say watch it, but watch other stuff first because it might be too much early on. So that's my list. That's my 6 list. I try to keep it, you know, within some sort of order and not do like, a massively long video about it. I just thought these 6, watch them, but don't watch them straight away. Watch them when you've seen something in the middle before you go to these ones because they may be a bit too much for you to start with. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I've got one more to go, another list video. So I'll see you soon. Bye for now.